Let's say it takes you 3 minutes to find that one citation to put in there. Now you found it, you got to put it in there. That stopped you from writing. You lost 3 minutes. Now you got to pick back up, and it takes a lot of time to balance and go back and forth between different types of tasks. You also can use sometimes AI to help to your advantage. I think some places where AI is actually extremely helpful as a researcher is if you're stuck thinking through interview questions to ask your participants. Let's say you're doing a qualitative study. You can give a prompt about like, hey, I'm doing a study on looking at this thing. If I was to use this theoretical framework to guide the study, what are some questions that I possibly could ask a participant that would align with this framework, and see what happens. It might jar your idea and be just a place to inspire you to create. Hey, does it feel like your writing process is just not working? Maybe you're staring at a blank screen or just looking at the same section trying to rewrite it over and over and over, and to no avail, the writing's still not happening quickly. And if you're struggling to make real progress with your writing, today's episode of the From ABD to PhD show is from you. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about how to fix your dissertation writing process fast. Because look, I know you all need to finish quickly. And on this episode, I want to break down how to fix your dissertation writing quickly so that you can stop spinning your wheels and start seeing results. And so if that's you, let's lock in and stay tuned. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings. I'm the host of From ABD to PhD show and founder of Done Dissertation. And at Done Dissertation, our goal is to help doctoral students write and defend a dissertation in record time. Today's episode of From ABD to PhD show is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Coaching Program. It is a coaching experience to help the doctoral student who has been stuck or who needs that extra support to get them from where they are right now to getting across the finish line and earning their doctoral degree. So if you're looking to earn your degree, but you need a system, you need a process, and you need a community to help you finish quickly, you can lock in and learn more about what we do by going to www.velocitydissertation.com or scan the QR code that is here on your screen. Now, let's get into today's episode because we're going to talk about all things about how to speed up the dissertation writing process. And we're going to be very tactical today. So be ready to kind of take some insights about how we can be tactical about this approach. And so when we're trying to speed up the dissertation writing process quickly, the first things first is that we have to recognize is that there are two common writing bottlenecks that will happen to you. And so those two particular writing bottlenecks are not ones you often think about. You might be right now thinking about like the actual mechanic of writing, but the actual bottleneck for a lot of writers is perfectionism. This idea that you have to get things perfect in order for it to move forward. So perfectionism is the first writing bottleneck. And then the second writing bottleneck is a lack of structure and or clear writing blocks of time. Because what ends up happening for you, I understand that you are a busy professional, right? And so you may be thriving in your, professional career. Maybe you're a VP level, C-suite level type of employee, or you're working in a university setting, you're a K-12 teacher, you're a scientist working in a lab. Your job is very demanding, but then also you're trying to write your dissertation. And oftentimes, because the job becomes so demanding, it takes up way more of your time. You're not willing to balance both of these things together. And what ends up happening is that, it becomes imbalanced. And then you don't know what to do. And a lot of times what happens first is that your work takes precedence over your dissertation. So though you don't give yourself enough structured writing times to actually sit down and write. But then also with that combined about not having the structure in the time is that also you're trying to get writing perfect. In my book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation, I talk about this and talk about how you have to master the 80% rule, because if you're trying to, finish your dissertation quickly, you have to recognize that your writing can't get and won't be perfect. Your goal should never be perfection. Your goal should be what we talk about in chapter 2 of this book. It should be at 80%. And if you want access to this particular book, you can go ahead and on this side and scan that QR code that's up in the top corner, and you grab a copy of this book. But I share this because a lot of you all, get caught up in those pitfalls, and here's how to deal with them. So if you're someone who's trying to be perfect, what I want you to do, it often stems from how you're sitting down and actually approaching writing. And so one of the things that I've started to see is that when writers sit down to write, they're trying to do what I call the different modes of writing at the same time. There's the creative mode of writing and there's the producer mode of writing. When we're in the creative mode, we want to get the ideas from on our head into our head to the document as quickly as possible, no matter how sloppy. And then in the production mode of writing, we then can clean things up and do editing. But what you will do typically is that when you're sitting down, you say, oh, I have a 45-minute writing block today. You sit down to write. The first thing you do is you get your mouth, you scroll up to what you wrote the day before, and you edit and read that first. No, 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 no. When you're in the creative mode of writing, you start from the fresh part where you're going to pick up with, you're going to write and get those ideas out during your writing session. There might be another time when you're just creatively tapped out, where then you turn over into the producer mode of writing, and then you will go in, edit, refine, and do those things. But a lot of times what writers will do is that you try to combine those things at the same time, and it just creates confusion, and you don't get anything done because you spend 35 minutes revising and editing everything you wrote previously. Then the thought comes in your head is that, oh, I hate everything I wrote today. I'm going to delete it all. And then you're back at square one, and even worse than you were before you started the writing session. Trust me on this. Try me out. You're going to have writing sessions where you only get the ideas out onto the page, no matter how sloppy. And then you're going to have writing sessions where you clean it up. But those will be distinct writing sessions. Try it. It's a life changer. I promise you. My clients used to try me on this all the time. And then they implement it. It's like, oh, Dr. Goins actually helped me. So just know that that is something that you to consider. But it gets tied into that pitfall of, perfectionism and then actually not having a structured time. So make sure that you have that first. Now, the second piece is if you want to fix, your dissertation writing process quickly, the next component you're going to have to do is you're going to implement a more efficient writing process. And so you are going to have to start getting more efficient with your time. In addition to implementing the creator mode and producer mode of writing, that's one way to become more efficient, because you're going to spend all of your creative energy creating and then all of your time producing. So that gets you more efficient. But what you're going to have to start doing is really being consistent with how you're going to show up with, your writing process. And so what I would suggest and what I started to do, I have like a timer that sits on my desk here. And what it does, and what I tell it to do, I just say, hey, can you set the timer for, let's say my writing session, I have 30 minutes. I set the writing session for 30 minutes. It has a timer, and I do what I can for those 30 minutes without interruption. So I block out all distractions, and I just execute for 30 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, I stop, see where I am. And then the last thing I will do during that writing session is I will leave a note, usually in the comment on, Microsoft Word. I'll leave a comment that kind of gives me an idea of where I was thinking, where I last left off, because when I come back to the document, say maybe later in the day or the next day, I can at least read that comment of what I was thinking before I last stopped. And then literally, if I'm in the creator mode of writing that day, I'm going to then pick up from there, and I'm going to engage in the creative process and getting the words out. That should be constantly happening in your work. And then also another strategy that I do in terms of how I became more efficient with my writing is that when I sit down to write a document, let's say I'm writing a sentence and I know I need a citation. What I do is that instead of going and spending 5 minutes to look for the citation, what I will do is if I have an idea who it is, I might put their name in, and I'm using APA in the parenthetical citation component, if I can remember their name. If I don't even know their name, but I know it's a citation I want to get back to, I literally put in the parentheses, add citations later. And I put it in bold, I put a period at the end of that sentence, and I move on to the next sentence. It takes me no time, and it doesn't stop the train of thought. Because what ends up happening is that, let's say, for instance, you wrote 2 sentences, and then you're like, ooh, I want to put that citation in. Let's say it takes you 3 minutes to find that one citation to put in there. Now you found it, you got to put it in there. That stopped you from writing. You lost 3 minutes. Now you got to pick back up, and it takes a lot of time to balance and go back and forth between different types of tasks. And so I would just say batch your tasks. Just like how I like batch create videos and those types of things, like doing all the same tasks at the same time makes it a lot easier to get things done. And literally I'm implementing this when I'm actually recording these videos and putting this strategy to test, because I think it's something that, is helpful for creative folks like yourselves. And so that's that one thing that I would do is just add citation later. Saves me so much time on the writing, because imagine if it took you 3 minutes to find a citation. Let's say you did 4 of those in a writing time. So let's say you had 30 minutes, but you did 4 times to go find the citations, and it took you 3 minutes each. So that's 12 minutes out of the 30 you spent actually looking for a citation and not getting writing done. That's almost 50% of the time. It's crazy when you look at it like that granular level. But I promise you, if you become more efficient with your writing time, it will save you tremendously, and it will keep you from being frustrated. Trust me, implement this. I promise you won't be mad at me that I told you to do this. And so the next component, if you're looking to speed up and fix your dissertation writing process quickly, the next component is that there are tools and techniques that you can use to speed up your writing. So one of those that I used recently, I had a book that came out February 1st, 2025, called The Finish System, a dissertation chair's guide to supporting doctoral students from start to defense. The book came out as a book written for faculty on how to chair doctoral students. When I wrote this book, how I wrote it is that I actually spoke it out first. And literally what I did first is I actually did a workshop, and I created kind of like all the slides for my workshop first. And I started doing the workshop a couple of times, refining what I was doing in the workshop. And then I literally turned that workshop into the book. And I spoke, and actually the initial draft of it was me in my office speaking into Otter AI and talking through it as if I was giving a presentation, walking through all the slides like if I was giving a talk. It just was nobody was in the office but me. That's how I initially wrote the first draft of the book. And then from there, I was able to edit and refine. I found for a lot of our done dissertation clients, this has actually worked pretty well for them, is that they actually, dictate out their writing versus kind of waiting to, sit at the computer and type things. Because sometimes we can talk more, quicker than what we can type. And there's a lot of folks that come in contact with when I ask them about their topic or what they're working on. They can tell me, they give me all these great explanations. They're able to connect the literature, but then it somehow doesn't show up in the writing. And so for those folks, I always say, why don't you just talk it through and then, use the AI, or whatever it is that's going to dictate, and transcribe what you're saying to then get you the text. And then from the text, you're just editing, right? So I think there's multiple modes to create. I think a lot of times we think about writing, we think about the process of like, picking up your actual computer and sitting with it and actually trying to, work through, typing things out. But that's not the way. Technology is evolving so quickly. So use some of those tools to your advantage. When you're looking at citations, there are a lot of tools out there that people are using. EndNote, Zotero, all those you can use to do citation management. Those things work great. You also can use sometimes AI to help to your advantage. I think some places where AI is actually extremely helpful as a researcher is if you're stuck thinking through interview questions to ask your participants. Let's say you're doing a qualitative study. You can give a prompt about like, hey, I'm doing a study on looking at this thing. If I was to use this theoretical framework to guide the study, what are some questions that I possibly could ask a participant that would align with this framework, and see what happens? It might jar your idea and be just a place to inspire you to create. There's nothing wrong with ethically using AI. Now, I'm not trying to get it to write nothing for you because it's not going to have your voice. It's going to get the literature wrong, etc. But I think there's a space to use AI that makes sense for your writing. And so I incorporate it sometimes into the work that I'm doing to give me ideas on titles of things and like just spark. Sometimes I just need a creative spark. And a lot of times my AI and we have conversations about just giving me creative ideas about how to rework things or how to present things differently in terms of what my thoughts already are. And so those are ways that, you can speed up the process by using technology to your advantage. And I highly recommend that you do so. And the last component and things I want you to consider along with techniques is that you have to make a commitment and implement strategies to stay consistent with writing. Look, if you are not consistent with your writing process, you are not finishing your dissertation. Because what will end up happening is that you will, sit to write and then something else will distract you. You'll be doing that. And just remember our example, just the fact of spending 3 minutes to find a reference, you're doing that 4 times in a 30-minute writing session will almost total up to 50% of your writing time, that writing block. Now, times that by doing that over 2-week span, let's say you were doing this 4 days a week. Like, look how much time you lost because you didn't have that consistency in your process, and then also consistency in showing up for yourself. And so a strategy I want you to implement today is that you're actually going to put your writing time on your calendar as a meeting for yourself, and then no one can schedule a meeting with you. Like, look, if you are a boss, you have some flexibility in that schedule. There's times where it's a low time at work and you can find the time. If you're a full-time graduate assistant, there's times earlier in the morning, later at night that you have where you can carve out that hour or two that you can dedicate to your writing. When I was working as a teacher, I would carve out a half hour during my planning period to write. When I started working higher as a staff member, I used to write before everybody got to the office. There are ways to do it that make sense, but you're going to have to implement some strategies to be consistent. Because the more consistent you are that you show up for this thing, especially if you're trying to finish quickly, the more consistent you are, the more at-bats that you take with writing, the easier it will be and the more successful you will be. But if you don't take that many at-bats and you don't take enough time to, show up and do the work, it can be a slow burn to finish your dissertation. And I just want to be honest with you all because I don't want you all going to this with grandiose ideas about how fast you can finish, because the people who are finishing quickly, best believe they are putting in work to do that writing. There is nothing that if they're doing their writing, there's nothing that you can take away from it, because they got to show up at that computer or wherever they're typing and do that work. And so just being mindful that if you implement some of the strategies we talked about in this video, you can indeed speed up the process. And then lastly, if you're looking, one of the strategies to be more consistent is that you might need an accountability structure. And if so, we provide that in our Velocity coaching program. And so if you're someone who needs that support, needs that hands-on coaching, needs that encouragement, needs that environment of like-minded scholars who are also pushing to knock out their dissertations quickly, the Velocity program is for you. And so what I would like for you to do is actually, you can scan the QR code that is here on your screen, or you can go to www.velocitydissertation.com. And again, make sure you do this, because I don't want you to be stuck spinning around over and over again with something that, with a little bit of structure, a little bit of coaching, a little bit of feedback, can help propel you to finishing your dissertation. And so make sure that you lock in with us. And with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode from ABD to PhD show. The greatest thing you can do for me is, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and notification bell. And if you're watching this wherever, make sure you follow us on that platform, and then share this with 2 or 3 people that need to hear this message, because we, again, want to make sure that folks are getting access to this content, and you all are doing such a great job with sharing this out widely, because regardless if you work with us or not, I want to make sure that people have this information so that, you are able to finish your dissertations. Because there's nothing better than, if you're part of our text message community, to send us a text message saying, hey, Dr. Goins on the team, hey, with the videos that you've been sending, I've actually finished my dissertation. Like, we love to see those. We reply to you. So some of y'all have been sending us to us as of late, because it's been defense season at the time of this recording. And so those are the things that we are so excited to see and want to see more of. And so we just want to make sure that you all have the support that you need to get through. So make sure that you share this video out with someone. And with that said, I want to say thank you for watching this episode from AB to PhD show. I'm your host and founder of Done Dissertation, Dr. Ramon Goings. And until next time, I wish you all a done dissertation. Take care and stay blessed.